earlier this morning. I don't know if you saw what we did with Chris Sacca.
Oh, amazing. Awesome.
It was sweet. So yeah, let's get right into it. Well, first off, let me tweet this out. Before even starting, what is top of mind for you guys right now, man? How are you feeling? Where are you guys? Where's everything?
We're feeling great. We're 3.5 years old. So we've been through like a lot, learned a lot, grown a lot over the past couple of years. I think that we start from the sort of basic question of how do you take the most important and powerful stories in the world and get hundreds of millions or billions of people to care about them? So not always the fun stuff, not always the like cool or zany or like clever stuff, but stuff that actually matters, about big social issues, about stuff that's like really near and dear to people's hearts, about politics and other things. And so it's really hard. And so we approach that whole process by thinking about like what makes stories work online. And I think like we got for our first couple of years, we were focused a lot about how to like draw people's attention into stories. And for the last year, we've been really focused on how do we make the stories themselves great. So we've brought our product focus like deeper and deeper into the story itself, and are really focused on making stories measurably better every day, because to get something to be really popular about climate change, it's just got to be a really, really good story. So we think about it from a sort of engineering mindset of like, how do you engineer a good story? Not from a purely like, hire a great writer to write a story, is sort of like totally part of it and insufficient if you're actually trying to figure out how to make these hard topics become incredibly popular.
Let's talk more about engineering a great story. Tell us more about, that's the headline, that's keywords, that's trends, like how do you engineer?
So I think we like to look at how would this story look to an algorithm, and then also how does this story look to a person that just happened upon it. And I think in both cases, we kind of end up with three things we really focus on. The first is engagement, the second is shareability, and the third is impact. So engagement is, it's in the story itself. It's more, rather than keywords, rather than headlines, rather than anything else, we're focused on, for a person that lands on this page, how can we make sure they stay for 30 seconds? How can we make sure that they read all the way to the bottom? And so we've built the tech to see where people drop off, and then we have writers rewrite those parts of the stories if we're like losing interest. If it's a story that's not, that a lot of people are landing on, but they're kind of bouncing off quickly, we like iterate on the first few paragraphs, or if it's a video, actually test different versions of the first 20 seconds of the video to find the one that actually like captures people's interest. And we take that same sort of approach to, we just are looking at a whole bunch of metrics on stories live and seeing where they seem strong and weak, and then taking a actual just creative editorial person to say, like, product can identify that this part of the story is weak. Now we need editorial to say, okay, I'll look at that. Oh, it looks a little boring, or it looked like I like threw in a historical allegory or something that like, well, I guess I lost people or whatever. So it's a mix of man and machine, or human and machine, that I think like is the key there.
Yeah, and things like Facebook Instant Articles, Snapchat Discover, Twitter Moments, other kind of distribution channels where the content isn't hosted by creators like yourself. How do you guys perceive that? You're excited about these? Do they make you nervous? Do you have to change your strategy?
Yeah. So we're excited about them. I think it matters what type of company you are and what your kind of general mission is. I think for us, our mission is to actually change what the world pays attention to and get people at a massive scale caring about really important stuff. And so for us, like other people building these great communications platforms and social networks, they're much better at getting people to log in every day, getting people to spend hours and hours of their time creating these great experiences. And if we can then bring great stories to those experiences, like inside your Snapchat, inside like your newsfeed, in your Twitter moments or whatnot, like we're very happy to do that. I think there's like a totally other type of media business and product business that's much more focused on, like, I read Ben Thompson's site, the Stratechery site, and absolutely love it. And there, I think he's less interested in those things because he's building a small, niche, highly differentiated thing that's focused on building subscribers as their revenue model. Like, and he wants to be speaking to people that care about really, really, really smart analysis. And that's a smallish number of people. So if you have a sort of like mass communication model, then I think all these new things are great. They're obviously like challenging in interesting ways, but we take those challenges as pretty exciting and interesting ones.
It's interesting. Is there, when is there a tension, if there is at all, between writing something that's really good and writing something that's not niche, that is going to be seen by a lot of people, good and important and popular?
Totally. No, it's a great question. One we wrestle with a lot. I think our internal thing that we say is we don't want to give great speeches to empty rooms. And I think for too long, in journalism especially, like compared to other types of media, there was this sort of distancing of people from like you would finish something, you would publish it, it would go out in that week's edition or that day's edition, and you really didn't care if anybody read it because you'd already done your job, and it wasn't your job to care about circulation or readership or anything like that. Our take from the beginning has been the impact we can make in the world is how good our stuff is, how impactful our stories are, times how many people see them. So our desire to have incredibly wide reach and reach hundreds of millions of people, like, comes directly from our mission. So it doesn't feel like they're in tension all the time. I mean, there are definitely times where we have a thing where we write a great story on an important topic, and and it doesn't go as far as we want, and we have that feeling the journalists have always had of like why doesn't everybody love this? But we see that when that happens more as like, oh, that's on us. Like, it's our job to make this stuff interesting, and if nobody shared this and nobody wanted to pass it along to their friends, like, we must not have done our job well enough, and like, let's give it another take. Hey, we're back.
Did I cut out or did you cut out?
I don't know, but you froze, but I might have also frozen. I don't know.
Repeat what you were saying. I'm trying to remember just like the last 10, 15 seconds of it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think when we write something that we think is really great, or make a video that we think is really great, totally, and it doesn't go as far as we want it to, I think we take that as that's on us. It's our job to make things interesting. And I think that like, I think more of the media would do well to think that way, of not thinking less of the world for not being interested in a topic, but just raising the bar on ourselves to like, let's just make it fascinating. Let's make it like viscerally engaging all the time.
No, that's interesting. I mean, it's not just, that's an interesting and very proactive response to have, is that it's not the world that's not enlightened enough for caring about climate change. It's our fault for not making it really compelling, and it is a key topic if, world, obviously. Do you kind of think, like when you see the BuzzFeed blue or that dress, or I don't remember what, black and gold or something, or blue and gold, or whatever the kind of thing that went viral was, what does that make?
That's a good question. I mean, there are definitely things that get tons of attention online that I think don't deserve as much attention as they get. And so it's not like, we don't think the system is perfect. And we created Upworthy in part because it just felt like, we're all just going to get caught in a cycle of like inanity and celebrity slideshows and like Apple rumors and every other sort of thing that like we can all get sucked into, like ourselves included. But it's just like, it's the sort of stuff that you like spend a half an hour with, and then you feel worse about yourself and you feel like you wasted that half an hour. And so I feel like the internet is full of that stuff, and then full of tons of wonderful stuff as well. And I feel like we're trying to tilt the scales a little bit towards the side of goodness and light in the world.
I've had this like kind of evolving theory that I call kind of a war of ideas. That there's an author I really like let's say Jonathan Franzen or George Saunders, who I feel like has a lot to say, but doesn't really have a public persona. Like they just put the stuff out there and then go away. I'm a little, and instead of reading Saunders, someone else reads something that's not as popular or whatever. Like I call it the war of ideas. That I competing for attention and mind share, and literally venture scaled businesses are competing to take your attention. As someone who's in this business, do you also see the world in that way?
Yeah. Well, everyone should read more George Saunders, and I think we should all just agree on that. But yeah, we call it either the global war for attention, or our editorial director Amy O'Leary calls it a street fight for attention. Just like there's like a real battle going on every day between all sorts of people vying for our eyes. And it's not only venture scale business like companies, it's also, every major brand in the world, where it's like, Coca-Cola has a massive marketing budget, and income inequality doesn't have a massive marketing budget. And so like one of them ends up winning out more in the conversation unless there's a big intervention that draws attention.
How do you guys position yourselves next to BuzzFeed?
We're big fans of BuzzFeed for the most part. I think they're very smart. We have a bunch of friends over there, as everyone in New York does nowadays, or LA. I think BuzzFeed is trying to be a lot of things to a lot of people, and I think we are trying to speak in a little bit clearer voice about that I think allows us to have a little bit deeper of a relationship with our community, where, if I have 5 minutes to kill, I'm, as likely to end up on BuzzFeed as anyone is. But I think that if I want to have one of those experiences where I'm like, get my mind opened or heart opened or something else a little more, like I'm more likely to come to Upworthy. So I think they're great, and I think they're pushing the space forward in a really good way.
I spoke to the founder of Mike recently, and he was describing himself and Mike as ideally being the New York Times of the century, or for millennials, or whatever. How is there a similar vision that you guys have for do you guys look at another old brand and say we're going to be this for the? How do you think of Upworthy?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been trying to actually narrow in on that, because it's a nice talking point to have. We think much more like sort of with a TV mindset than an old print media mindset. And so, like, if I could turn 3 people into one, I would say Upworthy wants to be like Ellen plus John Oliver plus Ira Glass or something. Yeah.
You should use that. That's a great comment.
I mean, I would love to have like a dinner party with them, if nothing else. And then, but yeah, I think that's more. It's like a little more focused on stories and storytelling than it is on news, and constantly engaging in one way or another. And yeah.
Who have you had a dinner party with that you are a huge fan of and really well respect?
You're just looking for me to name drop.
I'm giving you license to.
Well, Sheryl Sandberg came to us to try to like a couple years ago to draw attention when she was doing the Ban Bossy campaign. There've been a lot of people who have they have a story. It's of a particular type of meaningful story that feels just right for Upworthy, and even if they have like a huge media company or megaphone of their own, they like Catherine Bigelow, the film director who's amazing, like shot this great PSA about elephants and like brought it to us to distribute. So those are fun emails to get. Those are digital rather than dinner party, but still fun.
Such a name dropper, Peter.
I got to hang out with Bill Gates. Was fun.
Oh my God.
Talk about like how we're doing a project with them, with the Gates Foundation, just about how do you tell, not just did you get a bunch of page views and a bunch of video views and a bunch of minutes of attention and all that, but did you actually change people's perceptions? Did you make them more likely to act? Did you like actually move the needle in some sort of more substantive way? And so we're doing a big project with them to evaluate it. And the great news is that we're finding ways to actually do that in measurably better ways to like increase people's likelihood to act about malaria, which generally starts from like 0 and goes upward. So that was fun. He is as smart in a 1-hour meeting as anyone would imagine.
Good to know. Talk a bit about the evolution over time of the Upworthy algorithm on Facebook or different social networks, and where you're.
So I think that for us, we've kind of had 2 phases, and we haven't talked about this super publicly, but we had a phase for our first couple of years where we really focused purely on curation, meaning we had an initial take that there were a lot of great undiscovered videos on largely YouTube and Vimeo that were really excellent, were not getting the audience they deserved, and could be like discovered and packaged correctly and shared out to the right audience to make them reach a lot of people. And that bet paid off really well for us for the first couple of years and was really wonderful. Over the last year, we've really pivoted with our new editorial director, Amy, who we got from the New York Times and This American Life, and really focused on like deepening our actual editorial storytelling, like us, Upworthy ourselves, telling stories rather than just finding the best of the stories other people have told. And we're doing the same on video, going deeper into video and doing some licensing of great stuff that other people have done and also original production. So I think like that was like that was a pretty big shift, and that like mirrors a bit the Facebook's shift to start really caring about video. And I think that's actually one of the things that's rather undertold in the world. Like it's people know about it, but the battle going on between Facebook and YouTube for who's going to dominate online video is like bare knuckled and very high stakes and huge. And that actually had like a bit more impact on us. There was this whole story that like about clickbait and the Facebook algorithm and a whole bunch of chatter there. And every time that Facebook would actually update its algorithm and stories like that would come up, we would actually do, most of the time, actually be doing a little better the next day, because they were zooming in more and more on like, are these stories actually satisfying? And since we were so focused on actually making our stuff really enjoyable and shareable and engaging, like that worked out pretty well for us. But then when things started to shift, when they kind of went to war with YouTube and we were curating a lot of YouTube video. So I've pivoted slightly and still true to the core of finding and sharing and telling great stories, but like bifurcated the strategy a bit to as the like big platforms battle it out.
And talk more about.
It's hard to say. I mean, I kind of think it's going to be like Coke and Pepsi or something, where like I certainly think Facebook is going to do a very good job and is going to command a lot of attention share in video, and just like it's squarely in their strategic incentive to do really well, and they tend to execute really well. That said, YouTube is an amazingly huge and thriving community, and like I don't see it actually displacing YouTube really. I think they will end up serving different enough uses, but I do think it'll like in the way that great competition does, I think it'll force YouTube to really up their game over the next couple of years, and that'll be fun to watch because that always just Like it's a competitor worth sparring with on both sides.
Yeah. And what do you think about live video? Was Meerkat or Blab or Periscope or just that?
I think it's cool. We haven't played with it much, and I haven't even like personally played with it much. But what's your take on it? Like, what do you think
I mean, I'm actually a really big fan of Blab. Like this here, earlier today with like 2,000 people total come in, and
That's so cool.
It works well. And yeah, I think it's really intriguing. Right now, I think both Meerkat and Periscope are not going to win with the one-to-many celebrity approach. Someone on our team, actually, Neve, just came from Meerkat, so he can probably give much better insight. But the more kind of like Blab, multiple people streaming, whether it's competitions or collaborations or just easily picking people from the audience. You do press conferences, education. I think there's big potential for it if you can make it, scale and super social and just a good product. I think there's a big opportunity.
It's cool.
What do you guys think so let's talk about New Republic for a second. I know Chris is a friend and investor of yours. But they kind of, what went down there a couple of years ago or a year ago kind of really emphasized the tension between kind of old world media and new kind of tech, VC getting into news and journalism. Talk about what that meant to you, or what you think that meant for where the state of news and journalism is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't. I talked with Chris a bit during it, but not much. So I don't have much of like an inside view. From the outside, it seemed like the big transitions are always hard, and it seemed like they did a medium good job of pulling it off. Maybe a little lower than that on how well the transition was handled, and but I thought that the backlash was just a little bit crazy. Like it didn't like just the fact that it was like New York Times front page like many days in a row, like for what like a magazine is having like staffing turnover and outrage. Like it seemed like it was a very overtold story, I thought. I don't know. I mean, I think that like it's scary to be a journalist these days, because journalism was a thing that had a wonderful business model and a really dominant place in our culture, and serving a really important and noble goal for like 3/4 of a century in sort of its previous form, in a really powerful way. And I think it like allowed for so much positive change in the world to happen, and so much like truth to be exposed. And I think as somebody like, we don't consider ourselves journalism. We think of it like we're doing something slightly different, that's a little closer to telling stories and marketing ideas and drawing attention to things that like has some of the same goals as journalism, but doesn't actually, but we don't actually follow the same methods exactly. And
Right.
So I think it's a scary business to be in, and it's like we all in the product hunt world talk a lot about disruption, and I think like tons of disruption I'm very, very happy to see, and it feels like it creates new life, and sometimes like the things that get disrupted, we're actually doing a really good and important thing in the world. And I think like people who are disrupting industries have sort of the moral and ethical responsibility to try to not just have a better business model and be able to move more quickly and iterate faster, but also like retain some of that same like purpose and fill the same role in society as the things that came before.
Yeah, sometimes I think of it as like a public good a little bit. And you've written, or there've been a couple articles, Business Insider article and the Guardian one, about you talking about, I guess, the moral role of media today. And I think that the Business Insider article recounted an apology you made. I don't want to misquote you, so I want to let you kind of.
I mean, what I said, yeah, it was totally an apology. what I said then, and happy to say it again, 10 months later or whatever, is like what I apologize basically for us breaking the internet for a little bit of 2014, because I think that, you know, we start out from the mission of trying to get these incredibly important stories out there, and we approach it with sort of an R&D mindset, or sort of a mad scientist mindset. And like often happens with mad scientists, is you like develop something really cool in the lab, and then it like escapes into the general population and wreaks havoc. And so when like 1,000 media sites started copying our headline style and doing it like a game of telephone, doing a worse and worse impression of it with each generation out, it definitely like your Facebook newsfeed was a pretty annoying place for a little while because of that. So we did ignite that. We do apologize for that. We've moved well beyond it now, but yeah, sorry about that.
Take us back. Do you have this open in 2 windows? I hear a bit of an echo.
It's a good question. I'll see.
I think it might be good now. Make sure I don't. Yeah, that'd be good. So, take us back a bit to why you started Upworthy. You know, I know you have a very purpose-driven company, and you really believe in it. How did you get to the point where this was?
It's a great question. So my co-founder Eli Pariser and I were working together at moveon.org, doing like online advocacy, civic action stuff. And we both started getting interested in sort of the shape of the media landscape going forward. Part of it, like part of my personal story, was I had just spent 2 years kind of trying to help get Obamacare turned into law, and was writing emails all the time, trying to organize people to like call Max Baucus's subcommittee today to tell them to vote on this amendment. Like, it was like the sort of politics that was so far in the weeds as to be like, it had totally lost the story. It had totally lost the like, why should I care about this issue? This is a big thing that's going to get, 30 million people insured and save countless lives and do all sorts of things. But like, that story had totally faded away. So part of it came from a sense of like, they're big social movements, they're big important topics, and like the people working on them are just generally not focused on telling the story broadly and creating the space for change in society. And then at the same time, Eli was starting to write, we were talking, and he was starting to write this book, The Filter Bubble, which was about how algorithms work and what they hide from us and what they show to us, and how much choice and opinion is baked into algorithms actually, and just pointing a little spotlight on that. So we were both kind of circling the issue, and then it really was the insight that like, looking back 50 years, if there was an important issue that everyone in society should know about, you could put it on the front page of the newspaper, and you could put it on the top of the nightly newscast, and you'd hit like 70% of the country or something like that. And now when everything is in a news feed and you only see it if your friends shared it, it just seemed like, we have a war in Afghanistan. Is anybody going to know about that? Is that ever going to be like the thing that your friend shares? Like, and then 100 other issues like that. And so it just felt like, oh, this is going to really happen really quickly, and all the important stories are just going to like fade out of our consciousness. So we felt like there was something there. We started playing around with just a couple people. I think it was me and Eli and a couple we hired some like fellows to work on it, somebody to look at Google Analytics every day, and somebody to try writing some stuff or try curating some videos. And like, it just, we were just kind of in a skunk works exploring it. It was before we'd raised money. And it just started like taking off. And then like, we had this crazy experience of this great video, which is this Iowa teen named Zach Walls, who gave this great speech to the Iowa Congress, Iowa State House, about his two moms and just like making the case for gay marriage. And it was in like 2011, so that's like a long time ago in gay marriage years. And I don't know, I think it got 15 million views or something like that. Our like Chartbeat subscription broke. Our and we just had a sense of like, oh, there might be something here that's really interesting that we can learn a lot from. So then we had to make a decision of like, should we actually make this into a company? And that was totally scary. I had just had a kid like 2 months before, my first son, 2 months before we decided to actually go out and raise money and launch a startup. We'd been kind of incubating it within MoveOn.org, like within a nonprofit. So it's like a big leap out into like, let's build a real business here. Yeah.
But you had to, decide, is this going to be a big business? Is it going to be a lifestyle business? Are we going to raise money?
Yeah.
Make those.
So we thought about it basically from the mission, like having a mission of trying to draw massive amounts of attention to the most important stories in the world. Having it like the focus on massive there was really clarifying, because we said there are already a lot of good sites out talking about these issues, and they're reaching a few 100,000 people every month, or maybe 1 million or 2 people or something like that, and we thought like the actual space in the market here is for a massive site like on the scale of the huge media companies of the like Time and Discovery and Disney, like massive media company that has a really strong mission at its core. And we knew that if we stayed a lifestyle business or if we stayed a nonprofit, we would never grow to be anywhere near the size of the scale of the problem to be able to like help provide the solution.
A lot of people, ask if certain companies are tech companies or media companies. When someone asks you,
so we're both, I think, is the answer. I think we're a media company that's powered by a real belief in data and technology, and I think that that's what gives us our competitive advantage in the landscape more than anything. And so it's very true to our, very close to our hearts. But if we're slightly more a media company than a tech company, but very tech infused. And I think what we focus on with our technology is really figuring out how we care deeply about data, and then trying to figure out how to make data actionable to people in the moment. So there's I think there are a lot of media companies that have an editorial team and then an analytics team or a audience development team or something like that, and they're very separate, and the editorial team does its thing, and then other people try to do something great and technical on top of that or help it go a little farther. And for us, we try to bring the actual data into the hands of the people who are telling the stories while they're telling them. So you get the feeling, we think about it metaphorically sort of as if you're sitting around a campfire and you're telling a story and everyone gets up and leaves, you know that you're telling a bad story. Or if everyone starts laughing right after a line, oh, that joke worked. And when you're writing on a computer screen in your office or your apartment or whatever, you get none of that feedback. So we try to figure out ways to give people more of that feedback so they can iterate and change the story and speak more interestingly or make more crazy hand gestures or whatever it is, via the tools that we build. So,
and a lot of product people, designers, really talented developers are listen to this podcast. What do you think are the opportunities for a person deep in tech to work at a company like Upworthy?
I think they're great, and we are hiring. So you should definitely check out our jobs page. We're hiring for a number of roles in product right now, actually, and potentially design and engineering as well. For us, the various I'm a non-technical founder, so take everything I say with slightly grain of salt. But we have a bunch of people focused heavily on we've built our entire data pipeline ourselves on top of AWS stuff, but built the pipeline, built the data warehouse. We do a whole bunch of data gymnastics to get it into usable forms for people throughout the company. And then on more of the design and product side, thinking about the actual user experience of data, like how to not make it something that only the quants or the analysts can look at, but that real creative people can look at and get enough signal to understand clearly what's going on and what they should do. And I think like for a lot of people, a lot of creative people, numbers are a language they don't speak particularly well, or it's not their first language necessarily. So figuring out, we had a dashboard that originally started with like all sorts of statistical data on the statistical significance and the percent likelihood and a whole bunch of other things. And over time, we've pared it back and back and back to focus just on like more and more like colorful and clear sense of this version is probably better than that version. It appears there's a problem here versus not. And like, because a lot of times creative folks defer too much to the data when data folks understand that, oh, actually the data is very noisy and it looks like it's pointing in this direction, but if your intuition and your gut is telling you to go in a different direction, you should like feel free to disregard that data. So like, we think a lot in that space of kind of like the UX of data, where like product and design and engineering come together with editorial and video creators.
And not that many players in the space, in the old media world at least, have that sort of expertise. So lastly, what's next? What can we expect from Upworthy? What can product users expect to see? And any last plugs?
So I think, we're really excited about the future of video and excited to be everywhere with Upworthy Video. I think that like we've developed a really clear like voice and position, and you kind of understand what an Upworthy story, a lot of people understand what an Upworthy story and Upworthy Video is gonna be like. I think in the year ahead, look for us to like define that even further and like clarify our voice and put out a lot more like purely original stories on all platforms.
Cool. Peter, thank you for joining us. This was an awesome chat. Fan of Upworthy. Super excited for what you guys have coming.
And thanks for making product content. I'm a daily user and big fan.
Awesome. The whole team that does it's amazing. So if people do want to learn more and reach you directly, should they email you? Should they tweet you?
So yeah, tweet me at Peter. My last name is pronounced Koechley, which no one would ever guess. And my email is peter@upworthy.com. So it's open secret. And then our jobs page is upworthy.com/jobs.
Okay. Awesome. Peter, we will talk offline. Thank you for joining us on Products Up Live today.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Take care.